When we are talking about this, you have to factor in the other federal dollars being influenced by this. And the money that we received for the reinsurance basically was then taken away from us in the basic health plan funding from the federal government, almost dollar for dollar. And when you factor in the impact on the premium tax credits and so on, buying down the rates through this reinsurance is basically going to take away that many federal dollars. Senator Dames, you talk about how if we don't provide this reinsurance, if we don't reinsure the insurance industry, that it's going to drive up rates 50%. Well, that's a possible number, I suppose. But what did it save in the last couple of years? I think it was 17.5%. So saying, well, if we take this away now, they'll go up by 50%. If we put it back on, it'll save 17%. The math doesn't work that way. And the bottom line is that Senator Klein's amendment, which I strongly support, would provide the funding directly to the people who are being impacted. It does not have the negative impact on some of the people who are getting the APTC, because again, depending on how it works for each individual, some of them could be paying more because of this. Because as we buy down that rate by 20%, those are folks who every dollar their premium goes down, their APTC from the federal government goes down $1. So some of them are going to have a slight increase, some are going to have decreases. Bottom line is that reinsuring the insurance industry, that's supposed to be their business, but by subsidizing the insurance industry here, instead of giving it directly to people, I think that we're making a huge mistake. We can't know the numbers, as you said. In Senator Klein's bill, we know where the money is going to. It looks to me, from the numbers and the analysis I've seen, that it's slightly cheaper for us to go with Senator Klein's amendment than it is to go the other one, and it's not going to have the negative impacts on some of the recipients of the subsidy. Mr. President, this objectionable language to Senator Dames is what we had in the law before. It basically said that HMOs had to spend all of their assets on providing health care. We're just reinstating that into the law, and you're saying this is somehow objectionable because they can't function then. They functioned before in the past, they can function this way. It simply would stop the transfer of their assets, which are funded by tax dollars. We're taking their assets and saying you can't spend them for other purposes anymore. You can't transfer them to other states or for-profit entities or anything else. You can only use it for providing the health care you're supposed to be paying for. So as all this does, it's not something scary. It's what used to be in the law. We ought to make sure that this temporary solution is done the right way. And Senator Klein offered the governor's proposal earlier, which covers about the same 80,000 people, would affect about 80,000 people, not the entire 166,000 in the private insurance market, which is a whopping 3% of the public, but a small portion of that, because anybody who's getting an advanced premium tax credit from the federal government right now, every dollar their premium goes up, they get another dollar in the premium tax credit. So in effect, they're not seeing the increase. So it's about 80,000 people affected by it. Likewise, Senator Dames's bill would affect about the same 80,000 people. And the cost of the subsidy in the governor's budget is listed as $336 million for the next biennium. The cost of reinsurance in the Senate fiscal note on Senator Dames's bill is $359 million. It's more expensive. So when you net out all the costs from the federal government and everything else, the governor's proposal, as offered by Senator Klein, is actually a cheaper way of doing it. But fundamentally, one of the concerns I have, and one of the reasons I urge you to oppose this bill, not just because it's a temporary fix, not just because it's very expensive, but because we voted down an amendment earlier which would have said that the insurance companies, which we are subsidizing through this bill, can turn over their nonprofit assets to other purposes. We could have said, as a condition of getting this money, you can't transfer your assets to for-profits or other states or anybody else or any other purpose. You got to use it for the health care that was intended for, the law we used to have before 2 years ago. So if we are going to fix, or at least make a temporary patch on this 3% of our insurance market, then maybe what we ought to do is at least make sure there's some accountability there. I'm glad Senator Wickland offered that amendment for some accountability, but at least make sure they can't transfer the assets. They're public assets. We're using tax dollars to fund it. Make sure they can only be using it for health care. If we're going to subsidize the market, the least we can do is give it directly to the people who will benefit from it rather than giving it to the companies which have showed they would rather spend it for some other thing. So I urge your rejection of this bill. I'm hopeful the House will come up with the governor's proposal. I think that's a better way of addressing it. But let's not think this is a fix. Let's think of this as we're going to be back 2 years from now discussing reinsurance again unless we make other changes. Urge your opposition to the bill.